Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good people. Justin Gates here, aka Brother Juice, in the studio. Oh, this is the Rogue Disciple podcast today, people, because we're talking about the faith. We have, can I use your full name or
Go for it.
go your, okay, so, because you have like your Instagram handle too. It's like, we have Emily Ledbetter. I knew some Ledbetters in high school.
Did you?
Also known as MLed on the Instagrams. You are a young woman of faith,
I am.
which I'm so, we're going to talk about that. And you're also a digital marketer.
I am.
And so, quick on that. So, how'd you get into digital marketing? Were you always a solo operator, or did you come from like where you were part of a big infrastructure, a big team, and then you did it? Like, how'd you get there?
Sure. So I studied marketing in school, majored in marketing, minored in psychology, and I've been in my career for about 5 years, and I just recently left the corporate world. So I was working for really big brands like DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse, Lane Bryant, Zipline Logistics, just big corporations, and I was doing all kinds of stuff for them between social media work, podcast production work, website design and website soft coding, marketing, content creation, like you name it. I've worn all different kinds of hats in the marketing world. And just recently, I decided to leave corporate and start doing this thing on my own. So now I'm working as a freelance marketer, and I'm very niche, just serving people with their social media needs and podcast production needs, and targeting small corporations and small businesses here in Wilmington.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Why the jump?
Well, to be honest with you, it wasn't fully all my choice. The last job that I was working with, they needed to do a reduction in force. So I took my...
Oh, I love that term, reduction in force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went from about 40 hours a week to now 20, still working with them. And, at the time, it was really difficult. And it was like, oh, okay, didn't expect this. But, I had been running my podcast already on the side for about 2 years, and I was already making steps towards fully working for myself. So, this happened a couple months ago, and now looking back at it, I kind of see how God's working. I feel like in a way he was kind of giving me a push into it, like a little nudge. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and now I kind of have to go full in.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to go against God whenever he's just like, you got to do this.
So, exactly.
You said you had a podcast before.
Yeah.
What was that one about?
So it's the same one I'm running now.
Okay.
So Wrestling with Life. I've been running it for a year and a half now. And Wrestling with Life is just like it sounds. It's talking about real problems for people who are in my age demographic. It doesn't take long if you look at Gen Z and early millennials to see that a lot of people are addicted to their phones. A lot of people are struggling with self-esteem. A lot of people don't feel motivated. Depression and anxiety is at the highest it's ever been. And a lot of people are just feeling lost and stuck. And so when I created Wrestling with Life, the whole thought process was I had been in that position, and I had felt kind of that I fell into this like victim mentality. And that was never who I was. And I knew that a lot of other people in my age bucket specifically had fallen into that group. And I went through therapy, and I went through kind of like some self-reflection, and very recently rediscovered my faith. And so I wanted to create a space where we could talk about that, how to get unstuck, how to move through your problems, how to stop overthinking, how to stop pretty much being your biggest enemy, and how to lean on God through that.
That's so two things there. The lean on God part, we're going to come back to that. But then you said, what was the other one? Kind of, you had like a crisis of faith, right?
Yeah.
So, which, you were raised in a Christian household?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, what was your crisis of faith then?
So grew up in a very loving but also very strict Christian home. And my understanding of the gospel when I was young was basically do the right thing to keep God happy with you and so that you don't go to hell. That was my understanding of it. And as I got older and I started really trying to understand my faith both logically and spiritually and just make sense of this thing that was presented to me as truth my whole life. Like it was just like, this is true, like you should believe this. I started questioning it for myself once I got into college. And what I would call it is kind of like a slow fade away from it. I just couldn't reconcile or make sense of that philosophy of faith, of how could someone die on the cross for me and be my savior, but also it's on me to be perfect, pretty much. Like that just never made sense. And then specifically in like 2020, when political tensions were really high, I witnessed Christians and like very religious people using the Bible kind of as a weapon and their faith as a weapon to condemn, shame, and just overall put people down. And the biggest principle of Christianity is love, and that didn't make sense to me either. So there was just so much like anger and resentment built up within me towards the church, and I couldn't make sense of it. So that started like a very self-helpy journey for me, where the self-help world really appealed to me, reading the books like Mastering Your Own Mind, this notion of like you don't need God and you don't need anyone else and you can do it by yourself. And I would even say I was like Buddhist light a little bit, like trying to reach like nirvana in my own power, like, oh, I can level up, I can get to my highest self in my own power. And that was so appealing because, with God in the equation, it was something that I couldn't fully make sense of and I was so angry at. And this allowed me to just put him to the side, right? So that phase probably lasted for like 2 years. And then I moved to Wilmington about 7 months ago. And when I moved, I honestly hit rock bottom. Like I got here and I was like, okay, I moved, I'm in this new place. Like this has to be the answer. Like this is finally gonna solve my problems. And it didn't. And so I remember so vividly, I was in my living room and I felt the weight of the world on me. And I just cried out to God. And I was like, God, I'm so angry. I'm so lost. I'm so sad. Like, I just need you. Like, I just need you. I need you to help me. And a lot of people will share in their testimony that like something clicked that day and everything was different. That really wasn't the case for me. It was like a very slow, gradual process over the next few months where God really humbled me. He showed me that I had a huge pride issue, that I was trying to be him, that I was competing for his role in my life as God of my own life. He showed me how obsessed with myself I have gotten, how I cared so much more about myself and my career and making it and money and success and less about serving others and making this world genuinely a better place. Like I had such selfish motives. And yeah, it was very slow over time where I just felt like I finally opened up my heart to him and he started doing the work. Like it really wasn't me. It was just him slowly convicting me, slowly pulling things out of my life and making me want him again.
That is, that's how it happened for me. It wasn't fast overnight. It was a long, slow process.
Yeah.
But I came from a person who never believed, so it was like you couldn't just tell me, right? Because I was naturally cynical anyway. So you can tell me anything. I'm like, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, why would I believe any of that stuff? I had to figure it out for myself. But I think everybody comes to that point. So again, you haven't been brought up in it, but then you had that, okay, wait a second, how do you reconcile this? That's because the grown-ups in your life did not present this to you. They just said do. And then when you asked why, they didn't tell you why. They said, do what I say. And people question Jesus his whole existence.
Yes.
And he would sit there and go back and forth
explain,
with them,
yeah.
right? So when your story is like, nobody saw that. Nobody caught it. Your parents, your elders, your church elders or whatever, nobody saw that and said, somebody needs to talk to her and explain to her why we start to think this, especially when you were asking those questions. Because you were, a teenager?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is like my parents did do actually a really good job of creating that space for me and my siblings. Like we were allowed to ask questions. We were. I also think like childlike faith, there's something to be said for that. Where like when you're a child, I don't really even think you know to ask some questions, or like your brain isn't fully developed to like fully wrap your head around it. So like I think for me, it wasn't so much that like they wouldn't explain. It was just like I didn't know the questions that I needed answered yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if as a parent or as an elder, of if you're counseling younger people, that's your job to know that. To help them through that. That's what I see. I think that's the difference between like how kids and ministries were operated back then, or when you were younger, and you're younger than me, as to when I was a kid. We didn't have anything close to that, right? It was just like shut up and do what you're told, you know. So, but the threat of, all right, if you don't do this, then you're going to hell, right? Or you're going to displease God. It's like, yeah. But show me. It's in here. It's all in here.
Yeah.
You can relate that with a story. That's what it's for, right? So I think there was a missed opportunity, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's fear-based teaching, really, right? It's not.
Right, and that's
not
not what's in here.
It's
Like
not the gospel.
I mean, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
fear the Lord, right? So in Proverbs, like Solomon says, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, right? But that phrase, fear of the Lord, it just really means like it doesn't. I mean, dude, if you're gonna be face to face with God, I'm gonna be scared, right?
100%.
So,
Yeah.
but understand that's where it all starts from. The beginning of your understanding starts from there. And so, yeah, while there's something to be said about fear-based learning, there's also something to be said about if you're a child and you have the childlike faith, but you start asking questions. If you're asking questions, I don't think that overemphasizing the fear portion of it is a helpful thing, because it does what happened to you.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you're like, they're not answering my questions, so I must go and find them on my own. And it pulls you leave the faith because of this, right? Instead of developing a stronger thing with it. And maybe that's how a lot of people have to do it, right? Because certainly what I've found is that people that are in their faith their whole life, that's what happens. They have a crisis of faith. If you were like me, you never had faith to begin with. It's not a crisis of faith. It's a point of, how am I going to live, right?
Yeah.
I'm now faced with this decision. Am I going to take this path or this path? I've been on this path my whole life, and I've got a long way by myself. But now I've run into an obstacle that I cannot overcome without God's help, whether I want to admit that or not.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so this process of submitting, like you said, you cried out to God, right? Another way to say that was you submit your will to God.
I did, yeah.
Right?
I humbled myself.
And so when I did that, I was like yelling at the man in the sky on a plane, and a friend of mine's just laughing at me, and yeah, he was having a good time, but he was just sitting there. People on the plane thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
Because I am literally just arguing with an imaginary
Yeah.
somebody they can't see.
Right. Well, I think another piece of this whole conversation too is just like Christians in general have a bad rap, and some of it is deserved, because I was part of a very strict Christian community where, like I'm going to youth group, I'm going to church, I'm going on mission trips, I'm very involved in this community, and I'm experiencing like the true heart posture of these people, right? And no one's perfect. We all say things we shouldn't, but there's this undertone of judgment of people who are not, I guess, walking the walk, or they have some sin areas in their life and they're struggling, where people should be met with love and open arms and acceptance and let us love you, let us be here for you. Instead, this community meets people with judgment. And not everybody, but there's a lot of Christians like that. Mm-hmm. For me, that was where a lot of the anger came from, because it's like, okay, well, if you say that you've experienced Jesus's love, what is keeping you from turning around and showing that same kind of love to other people? Why are you then returning people who are not at the same place as you are in your faith journey with condemnation? How, like, in what way does that push them closer to Jesus or help them? Mm-hmm. That only isolates them further and probably turns them off from Christianity.
Yeah. I mean, even the disciples would change how they spoke and what their message was depending on who was in front of them.
Yes.
So if you want to reach people, it is incumbent on you, the communicator, to adjust your tone or your verbiage to your intended audience. Mm-hmm. As a marketer, that's what you do.
Exactly.
It's messaging 101, So, and that was one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn too, because not that I'm combative, but if if you want to pick a fight with me when we're
You're
fighting,
spicy.
you can't start throwing bombs at me, and then when I start
Yes.
throwing back, go, oh my gosh,
Yes.
you're so mean. It's like you threw the first one.
Yes.
I just thought you were setting the ground rules. It's like I'm ready for this. Like I can slash and burn. I can go scorch earth policy. It don't matter to me, right? Because I never believed in nothing anyway. So I got nothing to lose. You're gonna have a lot more to lose over this than I am. So if you're gonna start setting stuff on fire, and then I burn the whole world down, don't tell me that I'm the bad guy. Like I didn't come to the party with matches, So yeah, those people just. But you know what? Now I'm like. It's been, there has been a marked change in how I interact with the world. Not that I was ever like I was never like a totally ill person. I mean, I was 4 years mad. I was 4 years mad, just mad at the world. But that was when I was in my 20s. But now I can have some compassion towards other people, even if they have like none for me. It's like, that's not the point. The point is, do I have it? How am I going to, And if I call myself a believer, if I say that, yeah, I'm all in for Team Jesus, right? Well, then I got to put my money where my mouth is, and then show this person that, even though they might not ever come around, But like you're saying, that open door policy is like, brother, I'm here for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like I can't condone bad behavior.
Yes.
I will definitely encourage positive behavior. If you want to do good things with yourself and your life and those around you, I'll encourage you in that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to get involved with you if you're going to do other stuff. However, it doesn't change the fact that I still, I'm going to still care. I'm going to still be there, right? Because I need to be the example. Because otherwise, people are going to look and go, oh, all these Christians are just full of crap.
Right. We're called to be different. We're called to walk different, but that is so much easier said than done. And it is such a fine line too, because like you said, you don't want to condone bad behavior, and you don't want to be an enabler, and you don't want to turn your eyes away and pretend like you didn't see something that should be called out. Because it sounds like you're very similar to me in that you have a strong sense of justice. And if someone's a bully...
Sister, that's my name.
Yeah.
Right? It means something to me because I was literally named after that. That is my name. Okay. And so I seek the balancing of the scales.
Yeah.
And so if I can't get it, it really irks me.
Yeah, so you feel called to stand up for people who probably don't stand up for themselves, right?
Sometimes.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
And so when you see injustice happening in the world, you want to be the one to correct it. The biggest lesson that I've had to learn, and I'm still learning it, is how to do that in love. Because it's really easy to get sharp with your tongue and to jump to judgments and to get defensive and to be fiery and to be spicy. And there's a time and place for that, but I think the biggest thing the Lord's teaching me is how to hold my tongue and how to try to understand, to listen to understand instead of listen to respond, because there's a huge difference.
A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh tongue stirs up anger. That's in Proverbs. When I read that, my jaw dropped because I was interacting with a lot of people with a harsh tongue, but it was truth, right? So I'm like, my thought process was, I'm telling you the truth. Doesn't really matter how it hits or how it hurts, right?
Yeah.
Hurts your feelings. Don't matter. It's daytime outside. If it's raining outside, it's raining outside. I'm not gonna go, Emily, I just want you to know. I call it my Joel Osteen, right? It's like, it's raining outside. Make sure you get your boots on and your umbrella because you don't want to get wet. Or I'm just gonna be like, it's raining outside. Like, you're gonna wear Crocs and a tank top and it's raining. You're just gonna get wet. Oh, you don't care? Okay, well fine, be stupid. I don't care. Right? So it's like, you're so mean. It's like, it's whatever, right?
I get it.
So gotta reel it back in, right? Well, so your podcast, why did you start it? The Wrestling with Life.
Yeah.
Okay, you covered. All right, a lot of people. Was that the only reason? Was there any how did God help kickstart that, or was it you, or did you feel this sense I need to do something because I want to serve in some way?
Yeah.
Explain that if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Honestly, when I started it, this was about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. God really wasn't a part of the picture. This was when I was still really wrestling with my faith, and I was so deep into the self-help world at this point. I was in therapy. Really the biggest motivator was that I was learning so much information about processing emotions and reconciling childhood wounds and just learning how to level up emotionally, like increase my emotional intelligence. And I was seeing the positive impact that had on my life. Like there were ripple effects, like my relationships were getting better, my confidence was getting better. I just felt overall that I was a more whole person than I had felt previously. And so I was like, all this information that I'm learning, not everybody has access to this. Not everyone can afford therapy. Not everyone has the time, even. Like, if you're a busy mom with kids, you're not going to have time to sit down and do this kind of work. So, my thought process was, okay, I love podcasts. I've been listening to a couple different podcasts that I felt really inspired by. And actually, at the role that I was in at the time, I was learning how to produce a podcast. So before I ever created mine in a corporate setting, I was given the budget and the time and the freedom to learn how to bring a podcast to life for them. And so I saw that it was more affordable than I ever thought it would be to start a podcast. It's really not that expensive. It's
barrier
not
to
at
entry is
all.
pretty low.
Yeah, like very little overhead. I had a passion for it. I've always loved public speaking. I've always loved having deep conversations. And like the thought of being a podcaster, I was like, it just all aligned, you know? Like I had the message, I had the drive, and I had the tools, and I had the skill set. So I'm like, let's frickin' do it. And so I just did it.
Awesome. See, she took action.
That's right.
Right?
That's
she
right.
just said, I'm just going to do it, right? That's fantastic. How has your faith shaped the way you produce content and serve your audience?
Oh, dude, it's changed everything. So I actually completely restarted my podcast back in November. So I was 60 episodes deep, and I had been doing it for a year and a half, year at that point. And I completely started from scratch. I got rid of all my old episodes and I completely started over. I rebranded the whole thing. And I made a conscious choice from that day forward, once I came to the Lord, that I was going to use my social media platforms, my podcast, even how I do business on a day-to-day basis and the conversations that I have. I was going to make it all about Him. Because to be honest with you, I was so sick about making everything about myself. And I
You know
felt,
what? I got to give you a high five there, man.
right?
That's so. See that? Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
But that's what we're called to, you know? Like,
Yeah.
Satan doesn't attack us by us worshiping the devil. Satan attacks us and gets us to follow him by worshiping ourselves.
That's what I have said that so many times.
He does.
You know?
And it's so sneaky. It's so sneaky, Justin, because you have a whole generation of people that are my age who don't even realize this consciously. I didn't realize it consciously.
No, because everything is
Selfie.
right. You know what I mean?
Content. Yeah.
And it's so if that's what I told my son. I said, look, man, if you're always in here and this gets all your attention, it is in a sense a form of worship. And if you're always here, then you cannot. Then this becomes the thing that you worship.
Yes.
And that's not God.
No.
If it's not God, like what is it then?
Yes.
If you're not serving God, what are you serving?
You're serving something.
Serving something.
You are.
You
Everyone's
know?
preaching some kind of gospel, right?
And it really depends on which one you want to believe.
Yeah.
You know. So, but just to hear a 27-year-old girl say, "It's not about me. I'm going to make this about God." It's like, I think you may have been the first woman your age that I've heard say that out loud. So congratulations.
Well, I don't know about all that, but it's so humbling, and it's honestly excruciating, because you look back at how you're living. I was living for several years, and it's just that cringe of like, wow, I was so lost. I was so caught up in the world, and especially to have been brought up in the church and to have the truth so close to me and still have completely run in the opposite direction. And it's not like I totally went off the deep end, you know, like I still held my core principles of what I believed, and I tried to live a life of integrity. But the difference was I truly did, like, I know it sounds bad, but I was worshiping myself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like everything that I did, every choice that I made, every relationship that I had, it was like, does this serve me? And that's the wrong question to be asking when you believe in Jesus, because this is not about our pleasure. This is not about, you know, does this person actually give back what I'm giving? Like, no, that's not the gospel. Jesus died on the cross for us. That's unconditional love when we did nothing for him. We didn't deserve that. And so, like, when you fully receive the message of the gospel, it changes everything about how you walk and how you give and how you live your life, because it's no longer about, okay, like, how's this going to help me? It's about how is this going to help the kingdom of God?
Yeah, kingdom building. And
Yeah.
it's like, we were talking a little bit before about the shift that I think that I saw, and the shift that you saw about how
Yeah.
people, how younger people in your age group are shifting towards, I don't want to say conservative Christians, but definitely towards the church and faith in general,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think I see it, granted I've only been here for a short time, but why do you think that is? I have a theory. I want to hear what your theory is, and I'll tell you my theory, and because it might be the same thing,
Yeah.
or that might be just I might be way off, but you go first.
So why do I think there's more people
or
talking
the
about it
or the
now,
shift.
or the shifting to
Yeah.
it? I mean, I think at least with my generation, like you mentioned earlier, we grew up with technology, right? So we have been inundated with honestly access to the world at our fingertips from the moment we were born. And I think that I think that kind of makes you grow up really fast in many senses. In some ways, it definitely doesn't, but in other ways, like you just get exposure to so much stuff, and you have the world really. And so you taste really quickly that that's not going to fulfill you like you think it will. Like we all have that God-sized hole in our hearts that craves God and longs to be filled by God, yet all of us spend most of our lives filling it with drugs, sex, porn, success, money, whatever it is, And so I think a lot of us have had that really early, or a taste of that, and we realize it's not going to make us feel how the world tells us it's going to make us feel. And so, at least for me, that was my journey. It didn't matter how much success I had, how many friends, how much clout, whatever. None of that fulfilled me. And that's, at least for me, what took me back. And I have to imagine it's similar to other people's stories out there.
Yeah, I think my perspective is a little bit different, but not so far off based on what you're saying. I get it. All these roads led to nowhere is what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, I thought having the followers is going to be, or I have the dream job or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
or
yeah.
I'm getting attention, or I'm killing it here, I'm money and whatever. And then at the end of the day, you're like, it's still like, what for?
Yeah.
What my interpretation of that was, or kind of how I looked at it, I was like, the people before you who are just slightly older than you, right? In between you and me, those people,
Yeah.
they're all crazy. And I mean that because they had it too. They came up with it too. And kind of what I'm thinking is like, okay, your generation are looking at the people who are in between your age and my age and going, y'all are nuts.
Yeah.
All of you. You're depressed. You're going crazy. Your relationships suck. You hate your jobs. You hate yourselves. You hate the world. I don't want to end up like you.
Yeah.
What did you do? Oh, you believed everything this thing said. So guess what? I'm going to take what you did and do something different.
Okay.
Because it's unstructured, right? When you worship yourself, it's unstructured, right? So there's no, because again, there's two ways to look at this, right? And this is what I forget who I was talking to, but somebody, do you know who Aleister Crowley is?
No.
He said, do what thou wilt, that shall be the whole of the law, right? Jesus says, love God with all your heart and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? It's two diametrically opposed positions.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So that if you're loving yourself, you cannot love God
You can't.
or your neighbor or
No,
yourself, right?
absolutely.
In that healthy way. So, but there is structure here. There's the thing about the strict Christian upbringing is that there is a structure, right? It can be overimposed, right? Which we see in the Old Testament. That's why there's Jesus, right? Because the law of Moses was the law of Moses. There you had the 10 Commandments, and there are 613 other ones. There were so many rules that you didn't know what you could do. And Jesus came and said, that's not, it's the spirit of the thing, So Jesus took the 200, or the 613 laws and said, we're going to condense them down into two, right? Love God and then love your neighbors, right? Who's your neighbor? Everybody that's not you. So I'm looking at it going, I bet you these kids are looking at this going, all these people are crazy. What did they do? They have absolutely no structure. They were told you can be anything you want to be. You can do this, you can do that. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. And then in the back of your mind, you're like, I need something better than that. And so what represents that? There's a church doctrine, right? Might not be the solution for everybody, but it beats the alternative. And what's the alternative? Going crazy,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
So, and you're telling me, yeah, maybe not so much that, but we subscribe to that other philosophy, and we found ourselves on the road to emptiness.
Yep.
Right. So
Yep.
you just get there, and that's kind of that's not really where I was at, but how our paths are alike is that we both went searching for answers.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Forrest Gump where Lieutenant Dan's like, "Have you found Jesus, Gump?" He's like, "I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for him." You know, I wasn't looking.
I
You
wasn't
know?
either.
I wasn't looking for Jesus. I wasn't looking
wasn't
for
either.
God. I was looking for answers. You know, damn it, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
just wanted to feel peace. And I was like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do
Yeah.
to have peace. Why don't I have peace?
Yeah. Or what the world says.
Should give you peace.
This will give you, this will fulfill you.
Yeah.
No, it won't. And the thing is, the old people who were going to church all the time, they told us that, I wasn't going to hear it. I won't listen to nobody, So,
Well, you can follow the workout routine. You can eat healthy. You can, do the, I guess, catching your negative self-talk. You can do all these things, and they're great tools to help you live a happy, healthy life. But if God's not part of it, and if he's not the center of your world, what's it for?
yeah.
What's it for?
Yeah.
Truly.
And it's easy for us to sit here and say that, but hopefully people who are listening to this that might have been where we were
Yeah.
could make some sense of this. And this is why I do it, right? Because I'm like, I know exactly who you already know who your target audience is, right? I knew who mine was too. It was the people who were just like me, right? It's like somebody out on the fringe who was like, nah, I'm not going to buy into this or that or whatever. All y'all are lying, right? Everything. I don't trust none of you. It's like, yeah, but you're still asking questions, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't got to believe me, but I guarantee you probably might find something that's valuable in there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not going to push it on you, but I'll talk to you about it for real.
Yeah.
And, we're called to do that. Like, I used to hate the word evangelist because I didn't understand it. I didn't know why you had to go out and tell everybody. Well, now I know why. It's like, I don't want people to suffer, and like, we're going to suffer anyway. But at least with this, you have some path towards salvation.
Yes.
It's like, it may suck. Well, it's not always going to suck.
Yeah.
So, and there's a way out where there's not a way out with almost anything else.
Yes.
Come at me. I don't care.
Well, that's what's so important about telling our stories and being willing to admit to our mistakes and be vulnerable and share the cringy, painful moments, because hopefully it shows someone else, one, that they're not alone, but two, to, I guess, redeem those mistakes in a way, to say, like, here's how I suffered, messed up, failed, but here's how God redeemed it. Like, that's so powerful for people to hear, especially, like you said, if they're in that season.
Mm-hmm. And so many people in your age bracket
Yeah.
are.
Yep.
I mean, I'm 52. I was going through this in my 50s.
Yeah.
So it lets me know that it's not just a generational thing.
It's not.
It's a human
It's
thing.
a human thing, for sure.
Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome? I'm sure you have. Or fear when speaking the truth about faith in your work? How did you overcome that?
Yes.
If you did. Because it sounds like you were just like, whatever, I'm going this, boom, right? Fifth gear, bang.
Yeah. Well, even now, when I decided to recreate my podcast and make that pivot to making it faith focused, that was really difficult because I had a certain audience that loved the self-helpy stuff. And now I have an audience, like, not going to lie, my numbers dropped dramatically when I restarted it.
The self-helpy people tend not to like it when you cross over into faith.
Exactly. And so even now I'm kind of struggling as I'm creating content is I want to talk about God and I have no problem doing that. But I was very turned off to people who shoved God down my throat when I was not in the position to receive that. So I think there's a way to evangelize, like you're saying, and share the gospel without doing it from a place of like condemnation or judgment or like you have to believe this. So really, more than anything, like, I'm definitely not afraid to talk about God, but I am still trying to figure out the best way to communicate it. And as far as like the imposter syndrome thing goes, dude, yes. Like, especially because I'm 27, compared to people like yourself, I haven't lived a lot of life. And so there's always that factor of, do I have the credibility to be saying what I'm saying? And are people going to take me seriously? Especially being a woman too, like there's always that fear in a man's world, to be honest with you, where whether it's spoken or not spoken, there's many spaces that I've gone into where I don't feel like I'm taken seriously. And so you have a little bit of that chip on your shoulder of wanting to prove yourself and wanting to, establish that you have something valuable to contribute, and getting over the reality that there are definitely people who don't believe that, and trying not to internalize that is always a struggle for sure.
Yeah, but you're going to get that anyway. Even if it wasn't faith-based, you'd still get it anyway.
For sure.
So, but the thing about if you're talking about faith, it's like, look, it's not me, it's not you, it's what's in here, right?
Yeah.
So I know that one of the reasons why I like the preacher that I guess because he goes, this ain't about me. He's like, if I'm not here, and somebody else comes up here, if they're not talking about what's in this book, then they're not preaching the gospel. And so I'm like, yeah, that's true, because it really doesn't. It does not matter who the person is. It's not It's not a cult of personality. It is what is in this book. Right. So if you're speaking from what's in this book, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But again, Paul and Timothy. Timothy felt the same way. He was young. He was inexperienced, and Paul was like, he goes, you know more about it than they do. Just go out there and tell them what we have talked about.
Yeah.
It's like, you're already ready for this. So I may be almost 30 years older than you, but you've been a Christian longer than I have.
Yeah, that's true.
So in our walk of faith, you are a more mature Christian than I am.
Yeah.
I'd still be considered a baby.
That's a good point.
But and again, it depends on you have your chronological age, but then you have your age of what's your faith, right? So you're probably more mature in your faith than I am, because you've had those struggles and that coming to terms. How can sometimes you feel like God let you down? It's like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
Or why didn't this happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we all have that. What advice would you give to someone who feels called to social media or entrepreneurship, but is afraid to step out in faith?
Man, so it's been a journey for me, and I don't know how you feel, but like there is something in psychology where the moment that a camera is on somebody, there's like a tendency to start acting different. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's hard to just be yourself on camera, and especially on a microphone. And there's a huge learning curve with it. And it's, again, one of those things where the more you do it, the more it feels like riding a bike and the easier it gets. Like, my first podcast episode was crap. I think I recorded it maybe 25 times before I actually published something. Like just that desire of perfection, you let it go over time. You let it go. You realize no matter what I create, no matter what I put out there, there's going to be flops. There's going to be videos that get 2 views that do nothing. There's going to be podcast episodes that 3 people listen to, and whatever it is, whatever mindset that you have going into it, you just have to be open to the fact that 1, you're not going to be an overnight success. 2, you absolutely have to have a passion for what you do and a true belief in your message or whatever you have to say, because that's what's going to fuel you when there are crickets and when you're not getting the reception that you want, or you're not making the connections that you want, or whatever your goal is out of it. You truly have to, if you're going to do anything, just be so dang passionate about it and so believe in it. And I think too, like finding a community of people who are trying to do the same thing as you is so huge. I went to, shout out to Babes in Business of Wilmington. I went to an event of theirs this week, and it was a room of 20 women who are all entrepreneurs and who are all in a very similar season of life as me, where they are getting their business started. They're dealing with limiting beliefs. They're dealing with setbacks, and to have that camaraderie and to know that I wasn't alone, and to hear their ideas and to get excited about each other's ideas, there was just this sense of like, oh my gosh, I could run through a brick wall after that event. Like, you get so on fire, you feel so seen, and you feel like you're not alone. And I think a lot of us who are entrepreneurs, at least I can speak for myself, I try to do everything alone. I try to have that individual success. I don't like the concept of handouts. I don't like asking for help. Like, I can be very hard-headed in that way, and I'm just learning what a huge block that is to my success, because we need other people. We need community. We need people who are older and wiser to come along and hold our hand and help us get to where we want to go. Yeah, or at least mentor in some kind of way. I mean, none of us, no man or woman is an island, and there's no such thing. I saw somebody say this just a couple of days ago. They said, tell me somebody that says they're a self-made man, I'll show you a liar. Yeah. None of us make it by ourselves. And I used to think that. I mean, I
I've got tattoos on my knuckles, right? I almost tattooed self-made. And then I saw that and I was like, I am not self-made. I've never been self-made. As much as I thought I wanted to believe that, that's not the truth. I've
That's
had
pride.
help, you
Yep.
know? And I
Yeah.
need, if I did that, it would be disrespecting anybody that ever helped me.
Absolutely.
So I said, nope, I switched it up. Plus something else happened in my life and that was the reason why I got my knuckles tattooed. What's one Bible story or verse that has carried you through your toughest moments as an entrepreneur?
Ooh, that's good. Well, I'm pretty early days. I am horrible at quoting scripture, but verses that are about humility really stand out to me. There's one that talks about that the man who humbles himself will be exalted, and the man who exalts himself will be humbled. Humility has really been the theme of what God is doing in my life the last 6 months or so. And I think if we have to sum up the fall of mankind, it's pride. All of sin is rooted in pride. All of us thinking that we don't need God and that we can do it by ourselves. And like we were just talking about, being willing to humble myself, being willing to share that I've had setbacks, I've had failures, I've made a lot of mistakes. There's things that I would do differently if I could, and owning it, and humbling myself in that way, and being okay with saying, like, yeah, I don't have it all figured out. I'm learning every day. We all will forever, and just being willing to put your pride aside and just realize how much you really do need community and how much you need the Lord. That is carrying me right now to keep going, and I think it will continue to as well.
Yeah, it's hard to, I tell people I just got here. Literally God was like, okay, you're on Team Jesus now. You're just done. You're done doing this, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
You're here now. And I was like, well, I guess I'm here now. But I found, I started reading this. It started making sense. I go to church. It starts making sense. I go to Bible study. It starts making sense.
Yeah.
I told my brother, it's like, well, everything I'm doing, it just keeps making sense.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep going until it stops making sense.
Yeah.
And now that I've been doing it, that was 2 years ago. And so now I'm still here. And I can't imagine myself. I know what life is like on the other side. I know what it's like to have no faith and almost nothing. So
Yeah.
I just don't think I'm ever going to go back. I couldn't see myself switching sides and going back again. I don't want that. I feel I'm connected to something that's bigger than me. It's more fulfilling. I'm nicer. I'm way less angry, As an impatient person by nature, my responses aren't just like quick,
Right.
So, because my response is to shoot something down before you ever get it out your mouth. It's like, nope. What were we going to say? No, right? So I was like, that's a terrible person to be. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I'll never get invited to parties that way. But so I was like, all right, stop doing that, stop doing
Yeah.
that. And it's been better. I couldn't see myself going back and like not having this. It's not perfect peace, but it's much more peaceful.
Absolutely.
And for somebody that likes peace, like I want peace of mind. I want peace and quiet. I want
same.
serenity. Have you ever had a season where you felt distant from God while pursuing success? How did you reconnect? Well, you did. You did.
Yeah.
But it might not have been while you were pursuing success, but you were definitely pursuing your studies. You played soccer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played. Which position did you play?
Forward, baby. I scored all the goals. How about you?
I was a halfback because one, I was fast. Two, I could kick left-footed. We didn't have any left-footers, so I used to play left half or left wing, and what I would do is drag all the way to the 12, and then I could just chip shot it right on the 12 in the middle of the goals. I would just go and lob it in and watch. We had two guys that were the attackers. I couldn't hit the goal to save my life if I was standing on the 6. I think I took 4 shots on goal. And the one that I came close to, I told my friend because he was playing sweeper, and I was like, I'm gonna get the. He says, what are you gonna do? And I was like, I'm aiming for the goal. It's like, but I guarantee you, it's gonna hit the beam. However, since I know it's gonna hit the beam, I'm just gonna keep going. And I got it. It hit the beam. It came back, got right in my foot, and I shanked it away. I was like, that's why I was the assist king, because I could not score to save my life. But the 2 scores that we had. Oh, they were about to get it.
Do you still play now?
No.
There's leagues in Wilmington. I'm playing with, shout out to the Wilmington Women's Soccer Association. We won the league last season, and we're back, same team this season. We actually played last night, and we won. I played in college, but I do not have like any type of foot skills. Like I am straight up just quick. Like I'm just agile. So what I would do is I would probably get the ball at like half and pure speed, like literally just pass the ball to myself and like run past people with
Just
the ball.
give and go to yourself.
Literally, I just passed it to myself and then like slip it in the corner, and that was like my signature move. That's really all I'd be doing.
I would have murdered you. Like,
Yeah, you probably would
I'd
have.
be like, you know what's good? Well, I played against dudes like that, and I was like, oh, I know where he's going, right?
Yeah.
And I would just tell my buddy, I was like, just challenge him. He's going to kick it, and as soon as he gets there,
Yeah.
right?
Once a defender figures out what you're doing, you're done for.
Oh yeah, because you're getting slid.
Absolutely.
Unless you're like super quick, because I played against some of those dudes, and I would go to try to get them, and they would just look at me and turn the other way, and I was like, oh, you bastard.
Really, all you have to do is like one body juke. Like they think you're going left, then you go right. Like that's really all you need to do. But you can only do that like 2 or 3 times before they catch on.
Because the defenders they're going to figure out. Anyway, we're talking soccer now. Got off topic. How'd you reconnect?
Yeah, like I said, it was just kind of a come to Jesus moment where I got really sick of doing it by myself and it wasn't working. Yeah, that's really it.
What's the hardest no you've ever received in business, and how did God turn it into something better?
That's a good question. Okay. So my first job out of school, this isn't really a no, but COVID hit 3 months into my first job out of college, right? So you know how the economy was at that time. They were doing mass layoffs. And up until that point, when I was in school, I had like 4 internships. And I was just like such a success-minded person. Like I'm going to do everything that I can to land a good job. And what I didn't realize at the time was how much of my identity I was putting into my career. So COVID hits, mass layoffs. I'm included in like a 60% reduction in force at my company. And I had just moved to Columbus, Ohio. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I had like $2,000 in my bank account. I didn't know anybody. And more than anything, my pride was hurting because I was so excited. I had landed this like great corporate job, was making a bunch of money, was fresh out of school. I was so proud of myself. And then that happened. And you know how the market was in COVID. Like I could not get another job. This happened in March or April. I didn't get another job till October. So in all that interim time, it was me trying to figure out how am I going to pay rent this month? How am I going to keep my head above water? And I ended up getting a job in a restaurant as a server for a bit. And not that there's anything wrong with serving, but there was a sense of pride of like, oh, I have a degree and I'm not using it. And I thought, not that I thought I was above it, but it hurt my pride to then like go back to doing something I did in high school, And so I look back at that situation and first of all, praise the Lord because he provided all the way through it.
Right.
Like I never missed a rent payment. I financially was fine the whole time. And it wasn't a no like you're asking, but it did feel like a rejection. It felt like at the time I took it so personal. I'm like, if they really liked me as an employee, they would have kept me and they didn't.
Yeah. Me.
It was all about me.
Yeah.
And it was so humbling. And I think the biggest thing I learned from it is to detach my identity from my work and what I do. And it's funny because I feel like God has a way of reteaching us the same lesson over and over and over because it's something that I just relearned this past year. But at the time, it ended up pushing me closer to God. It helped me to really humble myself and to depend on him, Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story, man.
Yeah.
Because it does. Sometimes you got to relearn those lessons.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about you. Just bring yourself back down.
Yeah, he keeps teaching me that one. He's like, you think you're so great. Like, let me just humble you real quick.
Watch this.
Yeah, let me just take your job away.
Well, it's especially hurtful for those of us who really do, like, I like myself a lot, right? I think I'm pretty cool. And so when you do get humbled, if you're that person, you're just like, all right.
Yeah.
Cool. It's like, I don't know. I have that Gene Simmons approach where it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen what he said. He says, he's like, part of what makes me who I am is because I think I'm way cooler than what I am.
100% relatable. Yeah.
It's like, he goes, nobody thinks I'm cooler than I do.
Yeah.
He's like, I know I'm really not that cool. But anyway, how can Christians use digital platforms and social media and podcasting to truly make an impact for the kingdom. I mean, one is just getting it out there, but because in a sense, that's evangelizing.
It is.
You're putting the word out, which I think is a good thing, right? I think
Yeah.
we need more of that, not less.
Yeah.
But how do you see it?
I think the biggest thing that resonates on social media or podcasts is authenticity and people being willing to say what's true. I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes to like create this like perfect story or convey yourself in the best way or like share the details that put you in the best light. But I think the biggest testimonies are the ones where people can be honest about their humanity, their failures, the ways that they've messed up and how God redeemed that, because again, it makes it less about us and more about him. So I would just say, like, if you're thinking about podcasting or starting to share things on social media, opening up your Bible and preaching a lesson to someone is not going to have the effect that you think it's going to have. Share your story, share how God has shaped you. Be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to take that risk of sharing something that might be embarrassing or cringy or tough for you to talk about, because you just never know what words of yours are going to resonate with someone else. Like, you and I could say the same thing, but it could come across to one person so much differently just because of, your personality, your characteristics, your story. It's going to land with someone way different than it would with me and vice versa.
Yeah.
So we all have a story to tell, and don't be intimidated by how many other podcasts, how many other creators are already out there. That does not take away from your contribution to the conversation. Like I just said, like, your story is worth telling, so don't let that hold you back.
Exactly, because you never know. I want it to go out there. That's why I do this.
Yeah.
Because I understood that nobody could have got me here except maybe one person, and without that one person, I probably wouldn't be here. So if it weren't for his story and his experience and how he related it to me,
Yeah.
I'm not here doing this, and then you're not here as a guest.
Yeah.
And so somebody in your target market's not going to hear what you have to say
Exactly.
and then connect with it. You're right. I might not be able to reach a 32-year-old or a 27-year-old or whatever. Or maybe I do.
Yeah, maybe you do.
Who
You
knows,
don't know.
right? So
There's a ripple effect.
exactly,
Yeah.
and you won't know unless it's out there.
Yeah.
And it's incumbent on us to do that.
It is.
Right? Because if not, then I'm taking away somebody else's chance to get there.
It's our calling.
Yeah, and so I want everybody to go to heaven.
I agree.
I was like, let's get you there, but you can't know unless you hear it.
Yeah.
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 So let's do it. I'm in, right?
Absolutely.
So I have a few other things after this. This is the last question technically, but
Okay.
I got something else.
All right, let's do it.
If you could leave one final message to every Christian creator out there, what would it be?
I keep talking about humility. It's hard to talk about anything else. I just feel like that is the core. I think we tend to make, especially with content, it's hard not to make it about yourself. You're literally putting a camera on yourself and talking. But I think any praise that you get or any sort of recognition or success that you get, find a way to give that back to the Lord. Because the more that it's a slippery slope, and I experienced it when I was creating my podcast before, when God wasn't the center, that goes to your head so quick, and you think, wow, look at all this great stuff that I'm doing. And you really do start to make it about yourself. But when you do that, there also comes, there's two really opposite ends of the spectrum, where when things are really good, they're really good and you're on a high. And then when something flops or something doesn't go the way that you want, you then internalize that and make it about you. Whereas when you're talking about God, you're putting whatever you're creating into his hands and you're saying, Lord, your will be done. Do with this what you want. And if it does flop, then God didn't want to do anything with that. And that's okay. Not every piece of content you make can be a banger. It just is what it is. And obviously you can learn and grow from what works and what doesn't. But just remember that this is so largely not about you. It's not about any of us. It is about him. And that, I think, is what is going to help you to keep going long term anyways, when you can take yourself out of the equation.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes straight from here. I mean,
Yeah.
David did that. It was all glory to God. That's why David was a man after God's own heart, because he gave all the credit to God. Even Solomon, the wisest fool in the Bible, towards the end, or he got older, he started to make temples of Solomon and not temples of God. And it's like he forgot that one cardinal rule. It's not about you, goofy, right? So don't be saying it's the temple of Solomon. It's the temple of God, right?
Yeah.
And he paid the
absolutely.
price for it, right? He did pay a price for it.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So, well, that's it for like the
questions.
the podcast questions.
Okay.
And I just have like a few, and you don't have to answer them, but I'm interested to know, especially since you're a young woman and you've kind of had this journey.
Yeah.
Do you want a family?
Yeah, I do want a family.
So you do want a family.
Yeah, I
so
do,
that
for
means,
sure.
Okay, so part of the thing too that your age group, well, really everybody's age group right now, has a really hard time with is the dating scene in general.
Facts.
It's a clown show.
Facts. Yeah.
Everybody's got it bad. It's like everybody's got it bad. So as a young woman who wants to have a family, like how do you see that playing? Like how are you going to balance the career and the family?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Because you have to give some thought to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, have you thought about it?
Absolutely,
Okay.
I have. Yeah.
What have you come to? What's your conclusions so far?
I think it's so important. Like, I mean, I've never been a mother, obviously. So I think a lot of what I think right now is going to change when I'm actually in that position. But when I do think about having kids and the way that I want to raise them, the biggest thing that I want them to know is that there's nothing that they can do on this planet to earn love. And that's a position that I feel has motivated me in my career, in anything that I do, is this like underlying notion, I think probably that came from being raised in the church, that I have to like earn it, that I have to earn love, that I have to earn success, that I have to earn. And I think when you're raising children, the best way that you can teach them is be that example to them. And so I think the way that I do my business going forward is not by being career obsessed and by creating a really, I don't know what it's going to look like, right? But creating a really good balance where I'm present in their lives. They know that they're the most important thing to me, that work doesn't trump family, that love and serving and following Jesus is the number one thing. And that starts with me, right? Like I'm going to be their example. They're going to look to me, and their dad, of course, too, but they're going to look to their parents for what that looks like. And so just making a conscious choice to show up the best I can with that every single day.
That is a fantastic answer. I love it.
Thank you.
To start a family, you have to have the two people.
Yeah,
right?
you do.
So, I'm not trying to get into your personal life,
No, you're
but from
fine.
your perspective,
Yeah.
right, how has that process been? What's it been like?
It's been tough. It's been tough.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Like you said with the apps are just, I mean, in my experience, quite a waste of time. Nothing really ever came from that. There was one relationship that I had for I guess it was a few months, maybe like 6 months, that did come from an app, but that was an anomaly. And I would say that was a good Christian, solid relationship, but just ultimately not my person. I am dating somebody now, and I have been for the last 2-ish months, I guess you could say. What is so important and special and different, and what I'm excited about with this relationship that is different to all of my past relationships, is that we have made our faith the absolute center of it. And that's something that I've never done before, and it has changed the way that we communicate. It changes the decisions that we make together in our personal lives on a day-to-day basis, how we spend our time, the conversations that we have, and the way that we're just intentionally really deeply getting to know each other and understand each other and have the really hard conversations. Like, we're only 2 months in, but we've talked about kids. We've talked about long-term career success. We've talked about what our deal breakers are. We've talked about insecurities that we have. Like, we've gotten really, really deep and we've been really, really intentional. And it has just created this incredible foundation that is not based off of sex and, chemical highs and not truly knowing someone. It's not based off of purely physical attraction and like, how good does this person make me look? It's not based off of societal standards of like, okay, well, are you going to help me with my status? Like, how successful are you? It's truly based off of who are you at your core and who am I and how do we complement each other and how does that help us make this thing last long term. Like, we both want to be married forever. We don't want divorce to ever be on the table. Right. So yeah, it's created an incredible foundation.
That's great. I mean, that's I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day. I said that I think with the current dating metrics as they are, I think that the strongest relationships are going to be just what you described. Two people are coming together. Yeah. You have to talk about your deal breakers first.
Yeah,
right? Because otherwise, everybody's wasting time.
Absolutely.
Right? And neither one of you two can waste time.
No. Absolutely not.
So, nobody really can waste time. But for women, young women, right? Like, whether you want to admit it or not, there is a biological clock where childbirth, and especially if you want to have multiple kids, you probably want to start that earlier instead of later. Not that you can't do it later, but it gets more complicated later the longer that you wait.
Yeah.
And there's some other factors that go along with it too, and no need to get into all that crap and like potentially make everybody mad. But the point is that neither one of you have time to waste. So getting in there and getting clear about like, here's who I am, here's what I want, here's what I got to offer, like here's my deal breakers, this, that, whatever. And on top of that, God's going to be at the center of this. That has to be like the earliest conversations.
I agree. 100%.
And because it's so intentional, when you do find somebody who is as intentional as you are with that, it will be a stronger relationship.
100%.
And what we need are strong relationships.
Yes.
To foster those kids coming in, so you have both people who have got their heads screwed on straight and who are together for the right reasons.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And I do believe that there was another missed opportunity with that, especially with the way that the culture has been guided or pushed in the past 20 years, certainly from the time that you were a teenage girl coming up through high school and college, that was not what was being pushed.
No.
Right? Especially for young women. It wasn't that. That message wasn't there.
Absolutely not.
It was pretty much the opposite. Do as thou wilt.
Do whatever you want. Yeah.
So
yeah.
And so this kind of this intentionality that you're talking about runs counter to almost
it's countercultural, Yep. Absolutely.
Which is crazy, because who would have thought that, I grew up in the 80s in the birth of punk rock. Well, it's punk rock started in the 70s, but you know what I'm saying. So that's when I come up, when punk rock was becoming a thing, and it was anti-establishment. It was cool to go against the establishment. Well, who would have thought that now, that being like a conservative Christian would be, you're a punk rocker now, because you're going against the established norm.
I know. I know.
It's like, well, what are we doing?
It feels rebellious in a way.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, Johnny Rotten's a conservative, for Pete's sake. So, I mean, what does that tell you? So, all right. So I was just interested in that, because I know people from all different ages. I'm talking to people of all different ages all the time, and I see that's a trend. That is a trend right there. That intentionality.
Yes.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you guys meet?
We actually met at Run Club. Have you been to Run Club in Wilmington?
No, but I'm not trying to date, so. but it is a good place to go, because
that's how you meet people.
That's how you meet people.
Yeah.
But again, that's the key. It's in real life, going somewhere, doing something with a group of people with shared interests.
Exactly. I was just about to say, like, we had that shared interest foundation. We also had mutual friends, so I could also kind of suss him out through other people. Like,
well, that's how you're supposed to do it.
What do you know about this guy? Like, is he a good guy? Like, what's his reputation? Because when you're meeting up with someone on an app, you know nothing. And for young women, that can be a dangerous situation. Even for young men, like, you don't know who you're meeting.
Yeah, you're going to go get robbed.
You could, honestly.
Well, they have.
But not only that, it's such an organic start. It's natural, where neither of you come in with expectations. Whereas when you meet on an app, you don't know really what the expectation is. Like, are they trying to sleep with me? Are they trying to date? Like, you can kind of have that idea, but you don't really know.
No, dudes are trying to sleep with you. That's it. Like, on apps, they're trying to sleep with you. Don't ever think that they're not. That's what it is.
Well, with this situation, it was just nice because there was no expectation.
Right.
And we could just get to know each other slowly over time and start as friends and like build that connection without there being any sort of pressure or expectation. And
You know what they used to call that?
What?
Courtship.
Yeah, courtship. Yep.
Right. Back in the day, you had to go around and meet somebody's family, and you met them through social functions. There was a break-in period, and your side was going to be involved, and his side was going to be involved, and they would go, "Oh, this girl, she seems like a nice Christian girl. You should probably talk to her. She's going to be at the barbecue." And then your people would be like, "What do we know about him? Who's his family? Where did he come from?"
Yeah.
So it was more like there were more people involved.
Yes.
Right? And it wasn't just two people just, hey, you matched on this thing, and it's like, now what? It's like, well,
it's like a community thing instead.
Yeah. And you're right. You said it. You can suss him out you have a community who you can, he's present in that community, so he has to show up. If he's some kind of a goofball, then you would hear reports back like, I don't know about that.
Well, he is a goofball, but in the best way possible.
Right. It's like, well, he's not he's drinking, driving, smashing his cars. He's got like 14 assault charges or something like that.
Yeah.
And then some women would love that, but but I don't think it's a good basis to get married and have kids on.
Well, one thing I wanted to add too is like, especially in this digital age that we're in, a lot of people are feeling isolated and lonely because of the technology, especially in my demographic. They're not getting involved in the run clubs. They're not getting out there and going and doing things. They're on a little island. And the biggest thing that I see, especially with friends of mine, is so many people getting into relationships out of loneliness, not because of love, not because of shared values, not because of, wow, this is actually something so deep. It's, I'm lonely. I want a warm body in my bed next to me tonight to take that edge off. And it's not what God designed for us. It's not, that deep friendship that you create a real genuine bond of like, I deeply know you and you deeply know me. And the biggest thing that I would say to young people my age is, yes, it is hard, especially when you have been doing relationships a certain way for so long, but recognizing and realizing that delayed gratification of something that you can have later, whether that's, sex or moving in or whatever it is that you're like so obsessed with and you think you need right away, delaying that and taking all of that out of the equation allows you to genuinely understand who is in front of you and if they're going to be a good match for you long term before you even get attached to them or bond with them or anything. You actually know what you're dealing with, and that's going to save you so much heartache in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will land on some fertile soil and get into people's heads. But I do think like I've seen it, there is a shift. People are going away from that. It's why they're going to run clubs. And I forget who said it. Somebody else was like, well, where do you go to meet girls? And some guy's like, where you want to go
run club.
To meet chicks is go to run clubs. It's
100%.
Because that's where because so many people, like you said, they're dying for this actual, like, COVID did a number on the whole world.
Yeah.
Because it said stay away from everybody, which was not 100%. Really good for anybody. And people forgot how to even date.
100%.
And so I deal with a lot of people who are better with their thumbs than they are in this context.
Yeah.
And it's like, but that was never what it was supposed to be.
It was never intended to be that, yeah.
But there is something to be said about being able to separate yourself from a person and keep them at a certain distance, right? Yeah. And that's what technology allows you to do. But if that's your go-to maneuver, how are you supposed to interact with anybody?
100%.
And then you get them in real life, and you're like, you're just an awkward little something, aren't you? You're a platypus. You're just parts everywhere. You have it's not integrated properly. Like, figure yourself out, man. Sort yourself out. Figure it out. Do something.
What is platypus? I've never heard that.
A platypus? You know the animal.
I know the animal. But...
Well, the thing is when I don't know who saw it, but when the researchers or whatever first discovered a platypus, they didn't think it was a real creature. They were like, it's got a duck bill, it's got a beaver body, it glows in the dark, it's got poison. It is a mammal, but it lays eggs. It's got a flat tail. They were like, what? They generally thought that it was not a real creature. They were like, somebody stitched this thing together and like threw it at us. They were
Oh
like,
my
it's a
God.
Frankenstein creature, right? Because they were like, what is this? It's so awkward. What is its purpose? How is it like this? It's nothing else like it. It's like the literal unicorn, you know? Like, why is
yeah.
this here? This is somebody playing a joke on us? So that's what I was like. People were coming here like, you're just like, you
That's
don't
funny.
fit, do you?
Yeah,
like nothing
what's
fits,
happening
right?
here? I like that. I'm
you're
gonna
not
start
put-
using that. I like it.
I don't know. I never know what's coming to my head sometimes.
I love it.
Well, Emma, that's all I got really.
All right, cool.
Good luck to you.
Thank
I,
you.
I wish you and this gentleman I wish you the best, because it sounds like you're starting off in the right way.
Thank you so much.
Or in a very intentional way, right?
For sure,
So I hope that works out for you and him both.
Thank
You know,
you.
I want you to have the success, the kids, the husband, the life, everything else. Is there anything that you want to touch on that we didn't touch on?
I mean, I thought this was great. I really enjoyed our conversation. And
Well, thank you.
again, lots of respect to you and what you're doing. And I wish you all the same. And thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Well, hey, you know, God willing, we'll both have all like
Yeah.
channels blowing up
All
and
of
everything.
it, yeah.
We'll get all the stuff. Well, good to have you.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you so
and
much.
we will see you next time on the Rogue Disciple podcast. And peace.
Bye, guys.